Let's jump into our series, Wonder, where this is our third week. This is our Christmas series. We've been talking about this is the most wonderful time of the year. And what makes this the most wonderful time of the year is the expectations of the unknown. Oh, I wonder what that person's going to get me. I can't wait to surprise them with the gift I'm going to give them. Wonder is created with the unknown, yet we live in a culture that wants to know everything. We don't have our lives planned out. We want to know that we're going to graduate school this time. We're going to get married. We're going to have this amount of kids. Our kids are going to grow up and they're going to be successful people. And we just have this life that we try to plan out with no room for the wonder in life. And what happens is that you go, man, it's the most wonderful time of year around Christmas because there's this emotion that's created, this wonder that's created. And we even try to answer it in the video. Can you live 365 days a year with wonder in your life? Are we doing things actually in our lives that are robbing the wonder? And so that's the point of the series, are what are the things that rob us from wonder? The first week we talked about discontentment. We talked about we live in a culture that on Thanksgiving we're really thankful, and then by the evening we want a cart full. And then we got a debt from our cart full, and now all of a sudden we got all this other stuff going on. And so we go from discontentment or thankful to cart full to I want more, and that robs us of our wonder because we're just never happy. I almost think it's what happens is that the things that were one time in our lives uncommon become common. Those that are married, remember when you proposed to, guys, remember when you proposed to your fiance or your girlfriend at the time and how uncommon that was? Oh my gosh, she's going to be my wife. Or ladies, remember when you said yes and you're like, oh, he's going to be my husband. And then you like fast forward 5 years and you're like, oh my gosh, he frustrates me. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said yes. Or, and the list just goes on. And what happens is that apparently all our single people are on this side, it feels like, and all the married people are over here. That's what it just felt like there. You just felt it there. I'm not sure. I can't see. I'm just going by the reactions there. But what I have noticed is that at one point our significant other is uncommon to us, and then somehow they just become common. And we just treat them like, oh man, I want an upgrade. And I think sometimes that the things that were once uncommon become common, and they should have never been moved from uncommon. Think about it, if we keep things uncommon, the wonder stays there. And I know that's easy to say from here, and it's very hard to apply in our lives, how do I keep a wonder in my life, and how do I not lose that? Man, that's for you to figure out inside your relationship. How do you keep that where, man, I really don't take advantage or take it for granted that I'm married to such and such, or the car that you loved, and now it's like, man, it's rusting apart. I remember when I paid all that money for it. Man, why do we lose what was once uncommon? Why does it become common, and why do we do that? I'm not going to answer that today. That's for you to answer because I think it's different for all of us. And then last week we talked about, Jesus gave us grace. We're going to talk a lot about that today, but we talked a lot about turning around and giving grace to people that have offended us. And we talked about, oftentimes we read the stories in the Bible where we side most with Jesus. Oh yeah, I'm the one that's forgiving somebody. I'm the one that is the victim. They have offended me. And all of a sudden, man, last week, if you weren't here, man, this room was silent. It was like one of those times, like somebody asked me how'd it go that we weren't here. And I just said, man, it was one of those times you felt Jesus in the room. You just felt Jesus talking to a bunch of people. We dismissed last week, and everybody stayed sitting. There was no movement. It was just like, what do I do with this? Because Jesus was just talking to all kinds of us. Because we found out as we went through some of the stories that we are not the offended. We are the offender. That we are the offender. And if we're the offender, that means, okay, I need to turn around and forgive other people that have offended me because I've done the same thing to somebody else. That I'm not normally Jesus in the equation where I'm the victim. I am an offender and I need to be forgiven, so I should give forgiveness to that person. And it was one of those, without even going through it all, you should go on our website and just watch that teaching from last week. It's not great because I'm the guy speaking. It's just, man, you felt Jesus show up in here. I used the story with my dad, and a lot of you asked me a lot of questions. I just think it was a weekend where Jesus was talking to us. So make sure you go back and watch that. And today, we're going to talk about grace, but grace for you. Last week, we talked about giving grace to people that have offended us and hurt us and not become the statistic of hurting people hurt people that we need to. But today, it's grace. The story, the Christmas story, is all about grace in a blanket. It's Jesus came because something had to be. God's like, okay, I need to do something for a group of people, like the world, all scale, everybody's involved. I need to do something for everyone that they might be able to come back to me, that they would be in right standing of me. I got to do something about that. And that's the story of Jesus, grace in a blanket. And we all think we know what grace is. And as I was studying this week and thinking about it, it's like, I think I know what grace is. Did you know this, that the minute you think you deserve grace, you just voided grace? Think about that. If you think you deserve grace from someone, you just voided grace. It's like this. You planning your own surprise party, you voided the surprise, right? It's not a surprise party. You just planned your party, not a surprise party. Just like when you think, or I think, I deserve grace, I've just voided the grace. Now, so that we're all on the same playing field, I'm going to invite Michaela back up here. She's going to help me illustrate something. And a lot of you have been wondering, what are we going to do? The Nerf gun. Let's just get to the Nerf gun for all of you ADD people out there. This thing's intense. It's intense. Okay. Hold on, Michaela. Have you ever shot one of these before?
No.
No. Okay. So it's equivalent to paintball. You're not going to shoot me. But we'll let you hold on to one of those really quick.
It's like butter.
It's okay.
Like a butter ball.
I have never seen a ball of butter, but okay, that's okay. I guess you didn't ever live until you did. Okay, I shot Epic the other night with it. You know, he's being sassy, and I was like, oh yeah, turned it on, and I shot him right here. It's a little lower. He looks like he has a hickey today, so they do leave a mark. Okay, this is what you're gonna do. You're going to hold down this where you'll hear the motor engage, and then you just let go, and it's rapid fire into that. You're going to try to make it into that, okay? And we'll pick up those later, but here's the deal. Your goal is to get them to stay in there.
Okay.
If you get one to stay in there without it like sticking to something, it has to naturally just get in there, you get the gun. If you make 100% of those into there and they stay, you get a gun. 100% perfection, you keep the gun, okay? And I'm sure Joey's like, don't miss, Michaela. Hold on, whoa. Before don't shoot. Like, I'm concerned. Like, you know what happened? As a youth pastor, don't point that at my face. My goodness. This is how people get shot. Oh my gosh, point it down. Point it down, my goodness. We would take students paintballing when we were a youth pastor. You know how many times I got shot in the back by my own team? All the time, okay? The whistle hasn't even gone off and somebody's doing that. What do I do with it? Poof, and just get shot in the back. Okay, don't shoot me. Okay, so you're making in there. How many think she's gonna make 100%? Oh, I heard no, but I got a few people that said yes, but I heard no. So he's like, not a chance. Okay, perfection's the goal. You hold this where your finger is.
Okay.
You'll hear the motor go, and then pull the trigger and go ahead and fire in there. No, you're supposed to make it in the box. You've missed a few times. Okay, that was practice. Okay. Like you missed completely, you went left. Like hold it still. This is not Rambo where you're just doing this. The target. The goal. Okay, try again, Michaela. Here we go. You did well. One out. It didn't make. Nope. Oh, are you aiming for your husband? Okay, that's it. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you for helping do that. Put your hands together for Michaela there. Nerf guns, still a thing and very popular on YouTube because people make videos about things like that. When I found that the other day, I was like, this is going to illustrate my point. Here's my point with what you just saw. Perfection was the goal. Some of you were like, there's not a chance. Some of you, you see the glass half full in life, and I love that, never changed that. But the reality is like, come on, perfection. She never shot that before. Get it to stick in the gift there. Perfection's the goal. She missed it. You're going to hear me talk a lot about sin today. And if you've grown up in the church, you're like, oh, here's that word. If you're a brand new follower of Jesus or brand new around a church, you're like, oh, there's that word against sin. That's one of my beefs with the church. It just talks about this thing called sin. My definition, our working definition today of sin is perfection is the goal. We are to be perfect, but we are not. We miss the mark all the time. And so how do you fix it? How does Michaela now fix that she's missed all of that? That's why Jesus came, because God said, hold on, there's a void, there's a gap between me and these people. My people are created. They are not perfect. They are making mistakes. They're missing the mark in their life. They say things they shouldn't say. They think things they shouldn't think. They buy things they shouldn't buy. Then the list just goes down, the long list of things that Jesus or God's like, no, that's not how I designed you to function. And he calls that sin. And it's missing the mark. That's what we're talking about. This is an all-skate for everybody. How do I know that? Is because the author Paul, in trying to make us understand this very well, he's writing to a church that he started in the Roman Empire, and he titles his letter to his church plant Romans. And he begins to write a letter to people to teach them, hey, listen, this is who we are as people, as a world. Not just a church plant that he started, but this is who Jesus is and what Jesus did and what God's plans are. And so in Romans chapter 3, verse 23, these are words written by Paul. He says, for everyone has sinned. Or if we were to say it the way we just said, everyone has missed the box. Everyone's missed the goal of getting those little Nerf pellets or balls to stay in there. We've all missed it. We have all fallen short of God's glory, his standard, his glorious standard. Here it is, we're down here. Yet, God in his grace freely made us right in his sight. He did this through Jesus. This is why this time of year, this story of Jesus is so tremendous that, man, it breaks my heart when people want to fight that, oh, I don't think it's a real story. I think it's a made-up thing, because it breaks my heart, because it's like, no, we want this to be real because of the grace that's in the story. It's unmatched grace. It's undeserved grace. We're the ones missing it. I mean, how do you, if you don't have Jesus in your life, where you have a real relationship with Jesus, where you say, Jesus, I've screwed up, I don't deserve your grace, would you forgive me? How do you manage the missing the mark piece? When you say something to your spouse that you shouldn't say, or you say something to somebody through social media, you're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that, and it's out there, and then all of a sudden you just start owning it, and you're managing the grief on the inside, you're managing your own pain, where Jesus is like, what's the point of me coming and being born in a manger and dying on a cross if you're not going to ask me for forgiveness? What was the point of all of that? And we got people in this world trying to prove that Jesus didn't really come born in a manger, born to a virgin, live 33 years and die on a cross. People are trying to take that story and say it didn't happen. Why would we want that to be real? Don't we want it to be real, that grace is available for all of us? Isn't that what puts the wonder in this year? Is that if you truly know who Jesus is and what he did for you, doesn't it truly put the wonder back in the years? Like, wow, how can he constantly forgive me over and over again? I remember when I first got my license, I was invited to, I don't know how it works these days, but when you were in high school, it was a cool thing to be invited to somebody else's school dance. And I got invited to another school's dance, so I felt like I was something. I was like, I'm going to somebody else's homecoming. This is awesome. Another girl invited me. This is so cool. So I went to the dance. I showed up. I didn't dance. You know how it is when you're like a freshman and there's a dance. The guys on one side, girls on the other. And maybe the girls get in and dance and do some circle dance. I don't know. Still, that's the thing. I don't understand the circle dancing. Everybody just gets in a circle and they do something. It's like, that's not dancing, but okay. If you need dance lessons, though, we have a couple here that can swing dance really well, and they happen to be wearing Dolphin jersey today. So I'm not going to say their names or anything, but you might be able to find them in the sea of purple here today. But they are amazing dancers, and I have it on video. But I did not actually dance at the dance. I stayed at the girl's house. There was a party afterwards. And it was like one of those things, you're like, Mom, Dad tell you to be home at midnight, and you're like, okay, I'm a new driver, but I think I can make it from here in 15 minutes. Well, then I left their house with 10 minutes left. And it's like, oh, crap, I'll just go really fast. I was driving a Ford Granada at the time, and fast for that was, I could have just put my feet down and ran it much quicker, okay? It was a disaster of a car. It did not go fast at all. When you went uphill, it was questionable if you're going to make it up the hill with the gas all the way down to the floor. It took an entire gas tank to climb hills, okay? It was that kind of car. Those that are like at least 20, you've never seen a car. It's a boat, okay? It's ginormous. It's just huge. But I'm driving that, and I am flying. Like, I'm going as fast as I can, and the car's shaking because it's just old. And it's like, I haven't been this fast in forever, and you're just driving. It's like, I got it. I'm going to be okay. And all of a sudden, I'm about a mile from the house, and I'm really close to being on time, okay? I'm within 1 mile. I got about 3 minutes to spare. It's like, it's looking all good for me. I went to somebody else's homecoming. I'm going to make it home on time. This is amazing. And all of a sudden, I see the red and blue lights in my rearview mirror. And I've never been pulled over, and I freak out. I'm like, ah! And it's like, I don't know how you responded the first time you got pulled over. I go, ah! And pressed on the gas, right? It's like, and then I let go because like, whoa, what was I about to do? I can't outrun a cop car in this car. I'd be better just get out of the car and run. And so I pull over. I think what I did, it totally just ratted myself out. Instead of pulling over on the right side, I pulled over on the left side. So I'm facing oncoming traffic now, okay? I don't know why I did that. I just did, okay? That's what I did. I just pulled this boat of a car over. He comes over, he goes, why did you go on this side of the road? I'm like, officer, I've never been pulled over before. He goes, I got that when you put your hands in the air. I'm just like this. And, here's the deal. Sadly, I've been pulled over way too many times, and they must be trained to ask this question. Do you know why I pulled you over? Like every time I've been pulled over, that's the question they ask. And I learned really quick, it doesn't really matter why I think you pulled me over. What matters is why did you pull me over, okay? Because if I tell you what I think I was doing wrong, and you're like, oh yeah, and that. You had a taillight out. I didn't know you were speed, right? It's like, but I was like, I'm not quite sure, officer. He's like, well, you were going really fast. Why were you going so fast? And I won't tell you how fast I was and how fast the speed limit was there, but I was going plenty fast. He's like, why were you in a hurry? I'm like, well, my curfew's at midnight and I have 3 minutes to spare. I'm just down the road. Like, I can see my driveway. He's like, oh. And he starts asking questions about my family. So how many siblings do you have? I'm like, what does this have to do with speeding? Let's not have this conversation. Either write me a ticket so I can just get home kind of deal. So long story short, he just starts talking a long time with me. He talks about what school I go to. And it's been like 15 minutes on the side of the road. He's like, okay, I'm going to let you go. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. Hi. He goes, I figure you were speeding that fast to make it by your curfew. Your parents must be really good parents because you fear them. I'm going to let the wrath of them deal with you. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, officer, I would rather have the speeding ticket and then go home late. And I go home and mom and dad are both sitting there in their chairs, like arms crossed, no smiles. And they're asking all the questions. And I'm like, not am I not only late, I got pulled over. It just was a disaster. I lost the keys to the car for a long time. I was grounded. I was cleaning all the toilets in the house. It was miserable. There was zero grace from the officers and my parents. I remember that to this day because all I wanted, because I was guilty, I wanted grace from the officer and I wanted grace from my mom and dad. And you know what? I lived in a moment in that where I thought I deserved it. And that's why I didn't get it. Because I came in with the attitude of, no, give me a second chance, mom and dad. Come on, it's my first offense. I kept going, I deserve grace to both scenarios. And you oftentimes, I think always lose grace when you think you deserve it. Because you haven't got to the stage in life where God's going, oh, you're moldable now. You're teachable. You'll listen to me. Ever been around somebody that's not teachable? Man, it's hard to deal with them. Because you can speak till you're blue in the face and they're just going to do their own thing. They're going to continue to go the wrong direction. See, last week we brought up a one wheel and we talked about Jesus is 100%. We talked about Jesus being 100% truth and 100% grace. We don't understand that as humans because we lean one way or the other. There's not a balance in our life of the two things. We are either grace or we are truth, and Jesus is both. What I love about Jesus when I read through stories is Jesus called sinners sinners, and he forgave sinners. He was 100% truth all the time. He would say, no, that's way wrong, but I'll forgive you. And today I want to use stories that illustrate my point where Jesus was both. And here's what I learned about from Jesus is that grace is relational. If there's not a relationship, there's no grace. Grace is relational. I don't want forgiveness. If my iPad does something like breaks, I don't go, I need to forgive that for falling out of my hands. I'm not expecting grace from objects. It's always in relationship. So that's why God says, I have to create a relationship with the people that are missing the mark through Jesus so I can extend grace. Because grace is relational. If you don't have relationship, you don't have the benefit of grace. So if you're lacking grace from God in your life and you keep heaping just this burden on you, maybe there's a problem in the relationship with Jesus in your life. Maybe you need to work on your relationship with Jesus. And that's not me condemning you. That's me freeing you. That if you struggle with forgiving yourself of your past and forgiving yourself of just the last 24, I don't know what you need to forgive yourself for. You need to understand that through the relationship with Jesus is where forgiveness is, because grace is relational. That's why God showed up with Jesus in a manger. That's what makes the Christmas story so profound. We would have never known what grace was without the presence of God. Jesus is the definition of grace. Without this story, the Christmas story, we wouldn't know how to call grace grace, because it is illustrated in a manger. So, the author John, he wrote several books. John, which we're going to read from, and then he wrote 3 other books that he so creatively called 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, real creative. But those are the books he wrote. And he did life with Jesus. He was one of Jesus' favorite. When Jesus was on the cross, he looked down to John, because John was at Jesus' death, standing next to Jesus' mother. And he says to John, John, would you please take care of my mom? Take care of Mary. And then we can read through the Bible and other history books that John and Mary moved from there because it was such a hostile environment. And he goes and lives with Mary and makes sure that she's taken care of until her death. Like, that's how close Jesus and John were. So we're about to read words from John. When John was about to die, he realized, okay, I'm holding on to a lot of truths about who Jesus is. I need to start telling this story, what I was an eyewitness to. The things I experienced, I need to give this to people because they're missing the grace story. And so probably, because if you read through the Bible, you get that, man, the disciples were not educated, well-educated guys, not all of them. And you're like, well, how would they write this then? How would these uneducated men be able to write such profound words? It's the same way me, who can't write very well, if I was to ever write a book, I would get somebody who could write a book really well, and I would talk it to them, and they would write it down and go, did you mean to say it like this? I'm like, yeah, exactly like that. And they would write it as the ghostwriter. These guys, these Gospels are authored by or spoken by John, but wrote by somebody that was educated and could write very well. And so John begins to dictate this story of Jesus, true life accounts of Jesus. And this is how John begins to tell the story of who Jesus is. And we find this in John chapter 1, verse 14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. He's talking about Jesus here. Made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. These are John's words trying to communicate to you and I what he experienced. And when he said, we have seen his glory, he's not meaning you and me. He's not even saying we. He's saying me. He's saying myself, we. He's talking about himself. I saw his glory. I saw what he was capable of doing. I saw that he acted in truth 100% of the time and grace 100% of the time. And it's mind-blowing when you read that. I love the fact that Jesus never watered down the truth and he never turned down grace. He never turned down truth or never turned down grace or watered down the truth. When I think about Jesus, that's what draws me to him, is that here's this man that says, you've messed up, but I still love you. I know who you should be, and I know who you are. Man, somebody that knows me that intimate, but still loves me. And I wish I could say that about me in life, I want that to be said of me. That's the goal. But I miss the target all the time. Remember, this is an all skate. This isn't just for you sitting in this room. This is everyone in the world. When Paul writes, hey, all have sinned, missed the mark. He's talking about you and me and everyone else in this world. And that's what the heartbeat of Unlocked Church is. We exist for those that don't know Jesus yet. And those that know Jesus, we want to help them in the relationship with Jesus, become a better follower of Jesus, and turn around and give hope to those that do not experience the grace. Those that are wondering, where is the wonder this time of year? I've lost all hope in the world, and their job is gone, and their hope's been placed in all the wrong things. Yet you know where grace is found, and that the story of Christmas is grace in a blanket, and you hold the key to other people's freedom. Now, why wouldn't we turn around and go tell people? See, you even heard it in our YouTube video. We say it a lot here. What does love require you to do? We're asking in that question, you could substitute love and grace, because it's pretty much the same thing, because you can't have love without grace. And you can't love without grace. It's the same thing. So what does grace require you to do? It's to forgive those that have hurt you, forgive yourself, and forgive those that you don't like and that you have a hard time doing life with. It's to be a light in the darkness. So what does love require you to do? Jesus paints the best stories on what to do, because he has these amazing stories that I'm going to run through really fast. I wrote it like this. We are asking you to act with 100% grace and 100% truth. Love is all grace and all truth all the time. Love is both of those smashed together. Truth and grace, love. I know Holly pretty good. We met when we were in 5th grade. And then she fell in love with me. I mean, she saw me and she's like, that dude. Okay, it's the other way around. I saw her. I was like, that girl. Whoa, I got to have her. And then I chased her, and then she chased me, and then I chased her, and then I gave her flowers on Valentine's Day, and she threw them back at me like, gross. And I was like, okay, cool. Can we still be friends? And then we were friends. And then we dated our senior year, and she's like, oh, this is weird. We are good friends. And so we broke up. She broke my heart. It was a disaster. I had a lot of counseling for it. And then I started getting a tan and put it on as much muscle as I could. And I came back, and I walked really slow by her. I flipped my hair, and she's like, I gotta have you. And we got married. And so that's the quick story. It's exactly how it went. That was exactly how it was. But we know each other really well, because from 5th grade on, like, honestly, we were great friends. I was always at her house after church. We were doing everything together. We went to 2 separate schools, but we would just hang out nonstop. There's not much we don't know about each other. When we tell each other stories to somebody, we're like, yep, I was there for that. I knew that girl you were dating, Scott. Yeah, she always gives me a hard time. She's like, and if you know somebody named this, they're probably a really cool person, because I dated a girl named Poppy, and she's like, you dated a girl named Poppy? I was like, yeah, that's such a rock star name. She's like, no. She knows all of that, okay? She knows. But here's what with Holly and I, when we say we love each other, is we know each other. She knows my shortcomings. She knows the stuff I need to work on. And I know what she needs to work on. I have a lot more to work on than she does. I have to say that because I'm on the stage and she knows. So you're like, oh, are you going to get in trouble for that? No, she's full grace and full truth all the time. She is like Jesus. It's just amazing. No, she's shaking her head. She agrees. Okay, anyways, moving on. Love is full grace and full truth, because you know somebody and their shortcomings and you still love them. And you know that you can speak truth. Hey, that's not the right thing. That's what love is. And so we jump into a story in Matthew 9:9. I'm going to tell you the story. You need to write down, go read the story. Jesus strolling through a city, and he bumps into a guy formerly known as Levi, becomes Matthew when he knows Jesus, and he's a tax collector. In that day and age, tax collectors were the bad guy. You didn't like them. Tax collectors, their one job was to collect taxes for Rome, and then you could take whatever tax you wanted for your income. So if I like you, I tax you less. If I don't like you, I tax you more. And if you don't pay it, I can have you thrown into the dungeon. I can have you killed. I work for the Roman Empire, so I can just tell a soldier, that person to pay taxes, and off with their head. No one liked tax collectors. It was the worst of the worst, because they stole from you. Here's Jesus walking along, saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collecting booth, and he goes to him and says, follow me. Follow me and be my disciples. In his messy mess, He didn't go, hey, stop being a tax collector and follow me. Give up on what you're doing, pay back all the money you've taken from people, then come follow me. He just came to him in the middle of him doing business transactions, says, hey, will you follow me? Western culture Jesus is, in our day and age, fix yourself, find Jesus, follow Jesus. That's kind of how we have it systematically laid out. And Jesus is like, no, I enter into your messy situation and say, follow me. And as we do life together, you're going to understand I'm full grace and full truth. So I'm going to tell you that you're a sinner, but I'm going to love you anyways and say, we can work through that. That's what grace is. And so this story of Matthew, hey, follow me and be my disciple. The other disciples that were walking around, they're young Jewish men. They're like, whoa, Jesus, you can't do this. This is no good. We cannot be around this guy. He's the worst of the worst. The law says we shouldn't hang out with this guy. You really are making a mistake here. No way. We can't do this. So Matthew got up and followed Jesus. He got up. He left what he's doing. It didn't say he stopped being a tax collector. He just got up and followed Jesus. And this is a tremendous, because maybe some of you had an encounter like that. You're like, hey, I don't know. I think that this story is real about Jesus and grace in a blanket. I want to be a follower of Jesus. And you're like, but I don't feel less dirty or less messy. That's because Jesus cleans you up for over a lifetime. It's not a one and done kind of thing. We're going to say things. We're going to miss the mark constantly. We're going to need the grace. So later, Matthew invites Jesus, hey, why don't you come to my house? We're going to have a dinner. Other disciples, hold on, Jesus, we can't do that because they're going to have a party there. There's going to be other guys that are tax collectors, and they're going to do what tax collectors do. They're going to have the lights dimmed down. They're going to have the music that's like, And you're like, oh, we can't be there. They're going to dance kind of weird. And it's like, hold up, Jesus, you know what you're doing? And they're like, oh, Jesus is like, yeah, let's go. Let's go to your house. It'd be like this. If you're throwing a party and you guys have been going for a while and maybe you had a little too much to drink and I walk into your house and you're like, whoa, what is the pastor doing here? Wow, this is a downer. Whoa, oh my goodness. When is he going to leave? And we're just sitting there and you're just like, it's all awkward. You're like, okay, when he leaves, we can turn the lights back down and get the good stuff. Oh my gosh, it would be just like that. Jesus rolls up into a party with all these people that are doing their thing. And the Pharisees, the religious leaders, walk by the house. And they send a messenger in, because if the Pharisees had gone into the house, it would have been a sin. They deemed these things as sins to hang out with such people. And so they sent a messenger in to say to Jesus, if I can, let me scroll down. Here, they send somebody in and says, why does your teacher eat with such scum? That's the message they send into the house. And I have a feeling this messenger doesn't come in and go, hey, Jesus, so why, or to his disciples, why does your master Jesus eat with such scum? I bet you they walked up in the party, hey, why is it that you associate yourself with such scum of the earth, the dirty people, the people that aren't religious, people that don't go to church? Why do you hang out with these people? And I think Jesus answered just as loud. He didn't tone it down. I think he hears it. Actually, I know he heard it, because when Jesus heard this, John, so good at writing down, he says, probably just as loud, listen, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. And which I'm sure Matthew goes, hold on, Jesus, did you just call me and my friend sick? Like, are we sick? You're what? And at that moment, 100% truth, Jesus says yes. And I've come for you. And as you're following me, you're going to realize I'm going to do this constantly. I'm going to be 100% truth. I'm going to tell you you're sick, but I'm going to have a remedy for you. I'm not just going to tell you you're hopeless and no hope for you. I come to restore the hope of the world. The joy of the world is Jesus' grace in a blanket, so that today we might be able to grab hold of the truth that Jesus is 100% both and apply it into our lives. So Matthew records part of this story where he then added, now go, this is Jesus saying loudly again to the religious leaders, hey, tell them this, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture, you well-educated men. You think you know it so well. Go back and read the law. Go back and read the prophecies. This is quoting from Hosea chapter 6, verse 6. So there's a book in the Bible called Hosea. You can check it out. But this is what it says. He says, go read the meaning of this. I want you to show more mercy, not offer sacrifices. These are God's words spoken through the prophet Hosea. I want you to show more mercy, more grace, then offer sacrifices. He goes on, for I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. Those that know that they missed the mark. If you understand that we all have missed the mark, Jesus came for you. And that should put butterflies in your stomach. It should go, oh man, that's why I love Jesus so much. Is that he truly did come for me. I missed the mark. He wants us to have more grace and more mercy. So he's showing us this. There's another story that just is this grace-filled for people that don't know who Jesus is yet. I mean, maybe you know this story. John records this one in John chapter 8. It was early in the morning. Jesus is headed towards the temple. On his way to the temple, the religious leaders, again trying to trap Jesus, bring a woman that they probably kept in jail all night to Jesus and said, hey, Jesus, this woman, she's been caught in an adulterous relationship, and the law says she should be killed. We should stone her. What do you have to say, Jesus? Trying to frame it to where, boy, we're going to get him in trouble here. And these religious leaders are like, the law says she is to die. John records the story where Jesus bends down and begins to write in the dirt. No one knows what he wrote. But boy, if you want an entertaining thing to Google what did Jesus write in the dirt, because there are a million ideas out there. And it probably is something, in my opinion, is probably something like he's probably sitting down there and he looks up to the Pharisees and says, listen, it takes one to know one. I don't know what he wrote, but that's something like that. And he looks up and says, the one that is without sin, throw the first stone. The one that's sinless, you throw the first stone. And the author, John, records where it began one by one. They backed up. And they're probably tapping the younger ones. Okay, hey, we got to get out of here. This isn't looking good for us. This turned really bad. Come on. We can't win this one. Let's fight another day. And begins to pull them back. And now here's this woman. Fearful. Knows she did wrong, but has no hope. Men were going to kill her. And now she's waiting to hear from Jesus, who she probably heard many stories about, that he's done miraculous things. After Jesus had wrote again in the dirt, he looks at her. After he says, where are your accusers? To the woman. Where are the people that said you were this bad, horrible woman? Didn't every one of them condemn you to death? Didn't they sentence you already? And she goes, no, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Grace and truth. Stop doing it, but I forgive you, but don't do it again. Grace and truth. And we're just like, oh, I can't do that to people. I can't do that to myself. See, I wrote it like this. Jesus just had said to her, you are guilty, but I don't condemn you. Jesus always leaned into pre-repented and guilty people, invited them to follow him. Over and over, he leans into relationships with people that hadn't acknowledged their sin, initiates a relationship with them, and then gives them grace. Over and over again. He didn't call her a sinner right away. He intersects into her life, has a quick conversation, reveals the truth, says don't do it again, and I forgive you. And the one story that just puts the bow on this whole thing is at Jesus' death. He's crucified with two other men. They're hanging up there, and conversations begin. And Luke records this story. Two others, both criminals, were led out and executed with Jesus. When they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross, and the criminals were also crucified, one on his right and one on his left. And I don't know if you're like me, but when I read those stories, it's like, why is there no details to the crucifixion? They just always talk about the crucifixion. Do you know why that is? Because in that day and age, everyone knew how brutal a crucifixion scene was. You didn't need to paint the picture. Because his audience that he's writing this, when he says crucifying them, everyone knows the smell. Everyone knows the groaning and the blood that's involved and the yelling and just this heinous thing happening. He didn't need to give details because they knew it. They experienced it. The story goes on. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And the soldiers gambled for his clothes and were throwing dice for him. At the end of his life that he's crucified and people are not caring one bit about him, he still acts in grace. Then the crowd watched and the leaders scoffed. He saved others, they said, let him save himself. If he's really God, the Messiah, the chosen one, he could just pull himself off the cross. Then one of the criminals hanging there beside him scoffed, so you're the Messiah, aren't you? Prove it and save yourself, and while you're at it, save us too. One of the criminals on the other side hanging beside him said, don't you fear God? Even when you have been sentenced to death, aren't you afraid? Don't you want this mercy? We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong. And then Jesus answered, and when we think answered, we just think this conversation here is like going on real quick. You're crucified, you can't breathe. You don't die from bleeding. You die from drowning of blood in your lungs because you start to sag like this, right? And you can't breathe, and the only way to breathe is to push up on the nails, get breath. So every time you had a conversation, you're pushing up to talk. It's not a conversation of just easy. It's really hard. So to have Jesus answer at this moment is just an act of grace. Jesus answers, he's talking to Jesus and he says, Jesus, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? And Jesus replied. I think that's just that. And Jesus answered. That's grace right there. He answers. I assure you today you will be with me. Wait, be with me like on the cross? Be with me? Like, I'm here with you. I get that. No. I mean like, after the pause, the breath says, in paradise. You will be with me in paradise. Grace. This guy's going to stand next to Moses and Abraham, these men and women that we read about that are like icons in the Bible. They're going to be in heaven with this guy that at the last minute said, forgive me. And Jesus goes, I'll give you grace. I forgive you. You will be where I am after this. And it's like, hold on, that's not fair. Here's the deal. Just like life, grace is not fair. I wonder if you think of it like I thought of it when I was sitting there and these sinners are having conversation with Jesus. Do you think Jesus hears the prayers of sinners? Yeah, because that's the only kind of prayers there are. Because we're all sinners. Just because you decided to follow Jesus doesn't mean you're not a sinner anymore. We're sinners. We aren't perfect. We need grace. See, every sin in our lives comes with a gotcha. But that's why at Christmas, Jesus came to get you. Because every sin's gotcha. But Jesus wants to come get you. And I don't know where you are in your relationship with Jesus, but maybe it's time to come back. Or maybe some of you need to take this story to someone in your workplace this week and take them out to lunch. And point them to Jesus. Maybe it's time for you to give grace to those that are sinners. But you are, after all, a sinner too. We ask this question all the time here. What is Jesus saying to you and what are you going to do about it? I hope Jesus spoke to you in something that was said here today. Maybe it's grace for you. Maybe you just understand even more why it's such a wonderful time of year because of the grace in the blanket. I hope that it inspires you and encourages you that, man, Jesus is inviting you in your mess. He's not saying fix it. He wants you to follow in your mess. And he says, we'll figure it out in the relationship. I'm going to tell you at times, stop doing that. But I'm going to forgive you when I know you did it. And you're like, I don't know, what's the wrestling that? Here's the deal, don't take advantage of grace. Because when you're taking advantage of grace, it's you going, I'll ask forgiveness for it. It's the saying, oh, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. No, you don't get forgiveness when you know you're doing something wrong. That is saying, I deserve grace when I do wrong. You void grace when you think you deserve it. I'm speaking to myself here. I am messy. I don't have it together. I miss the mark all the time. I would have probably missed it way many more times hitting this box with that gun there. I'd have done it. I'd have missed it. I need Jesus in my life, and I'm so grateful for the story at Christmas because it restores my hope that I know Jesus knows who I am in all my messes, but he still loves me and forgives me. And he says, Scott, stop doing that, but I have high hopes for you, Scott. Stop doing it. Jesus has high hopes for you. Close your eyes, would you please? And just ask this and answer it. What is Jesus saying to you today, and what are you going to do about it?